A bitter wind claws through the stone corridors of a hilltop manor, carrying with it the stink of sheep dung, of boiled barley, of something older, rot, perhaps, or grief. It winds like a ghost through the narrow servants' quarters, tugging at the rags stuffed into the cracks of windows and under doors. In this forgotten corner of the world, heat is a memory, and comfort a lie. On her knees, Ellen scrubs the cracked wooden floor with a vinegar-soaked rag that burns the raw skin of her hands. Her knuckles split like old parchment. Her breath fogs in front of her mouth, then vanishes into nothing. She does not shiver. She has learned not to. The chill is her companion, her constant, the thing that touches her more than any human hand has in years. Above her, laughter. It rolls down the carved ceilings in waves, bright, careless, cruel. The noblemen feast. Hounds bark and snap at greasy bones. Goblets spill wine like blood. Somewhere, a minstrel plays a lute with fingers kissed by warmth and coin. And somewhere else, a child not much younger than Ellen is spoon-fed honeyed figs on a silver plate. But here, in the dark, she is alone, 14 winters old, and already carved down to silence. Her name, Ellen, was once sung by a mother with calloused hands and nettle-stung wrists. That name was once wrapped in warmth and lullabies. Now it is barked like an order, like a threat. It no longer belongs to her. It belongs to the master. She was sold like livestock. For one goat, her future was bartered. And now, her world is a rhythm of servitude. Wake before the sun, scrub until it hurts, bow without looking, eat only if there's scraps. She knows the weight of every bucket, the sting of every missed curtsy, the sound of footsteps that mean danger. Bruises blossom like flowers beneath her sleeves. No one asks, no one answers. And yet, she dreams. In the kitchen, the air hangs thick with the sting of onions and the sweet rot of spoiled apples. Beeswax candles sputter. She stirs a bubbling pot of pottage, the spoon far too heavy for her narrow wrist. Her arms ache. Her stomach growls. She does not stop. If she burns it, she will not eat. If she drops it, she will not rise tomorrow. Still, in the flicker of the firelight, her eyes wander. She dreams of green fields, real ones, not the ones she scrubs into stone. Of birdsong that's not drowned in shouting. Of bread so warm it steams in your hands. Of the feel of sun on bare skin, without punishment. She remembers a tree once, just a tree, but it had fruit, and shade, and her brother fell asleep beneath it with a blade of grass between his teeth. She hasn't seen him in 3 years. Her sleep is short, and full of noises. Bells clang, rats scream, boots stomp. Sometimes she dreams of her old cottage, but it turns to ash before she can run to it. Sometimes, she hears her mother's voice, but even in dreams it's fading. And yet, not all hope is buried. Whispers travel on wind, faster than chains. The older servants, the ones with hands like bark and eyes like stone, speak of a way out. A tunnel, hidden, narrow, forgotten by time and men. It runs beneath the manor, carved long ago during war. It begins in the bottom of the old well, winds beneath the vicar's garden, and spills into the woods where no lanterns reach. None have dared it, not yet, but the whispers cling to Ellen like frost. She listens, she watches, she waits. Then, one evening, as the snow gathers like ash across the fields and the manor bell prepares to toll midnight, something shifts. A veil of smoke curls through the narrow kitchen window, wood smoke, from the hearth. But in its swirls she sees more than soot. She sees a path, a choice. She tightens her apron strings. Her breath steadies. From beneath the loose stone under the bread table, she pulls a rusted iron key, the kind that once locked storerooms or chests, before the manor grew rich and forgot its secrets. She tucks it beneath her tunic, cold against her chest. The manor bell tolls midnight. Once, twice. The sound is heavy, mournful, like a heart beating for the last time. In the silence that follows, Ellen moves, quiet as mist. She slips past the sleeping dogs, past the kitchen boy snoring into a sack of flour, down the steps, her bare feet silent on stone. The cold kisses her ankles, but she does not flinch. The world narrows to breath, to steps, to shadows. Outside, The wind howls like a mourning mother. She reaches the old well, it leans slightly, stones slick with moss and time. No one draws water from it anymore. The bucket's rotted, the rope snapped, but the rusted pulley creaks softly, like a voice clearing its throat after years of silence. She lowers herself slowly, clutching the rope with hands made strong by years of scrubbing. The air grows damp, earthy, it smells of roots and bones. Then her foot touches stone. A tunnel, narrow, cramped, blacker than sin, but real. She presses forward, one hand on the wall, one hand clutching the key like a prayer. Behind her, the manor sleeps, bloated and blind. Ahead, what? Freedom? Death? She does not know, but she moves forward. Because hope, once whispered, cannot be buried. Because even a servant girl, sold for a goat, can dream of wings. And because midnight is not just an end, it is a beginning. The frost does not weep for the living. It clings instead to the pale earth beyond the manor's fence, to the thatch and splinter, to the bones of the forgotten. Maud moves through it, like a shadow cursed to remain. The chamber pot in her hands is warm from another's sleep. She does not look at it. She does not look at the sky. She watches the ground, always, because to stumble is to feel the sharpness of God's cold truth in the knees. Her breath curls like smoke in the morning mist, vanishing before it can become a prayer. No one calls her name, not since the barley failed, not since the pigs disappeared into famine, not since her father, once the reeve, proud with a staff in hand and sun in his beard, traded dignity for bread, and then his daughter for debt. They did not whip her, they did not brand her, but what they took was more quiet, her music, her warmth, the cadence of being seen. Inside the manor, she is no more than steam rising from dung water, no less than the hinge of a door that does not close cleanly. She bends to scrub, to carry, to endure, and endures. Each morning is a resurrection into toil, each night, a burial into silence. When she steps, her joints groan, a dull, cracked symphony of old aches. Her hands, red and raw from lie and cold, have forgotten softness. She was once light-footed. She remembers this vaguely, as one remembers a dream too distant to trust. The other servants pass her with the same eyes they cast toward gutters and smudged glass. She is not cruel, only invisible. Too old to be worth a dowry, too silent to be feared, too bent to bear more weight than she already carries. Still, Maud remembers, in the stillness between duties, in the pause before dawn while the fire still sulks, she hums, just low enough that only the mice and God might hear, old hymns, Michaelmas songs her mother taught her when hands were clean and voices were round with joy. She remembers the scent of rosemary, steeped in warm water, her sister's hair combed out beneath an open window. She remembers music, the taut snap of a lute string plucked just so. She remembers warmth, once. The bread they give her now cracks her molars. The broth is thin and shimmers with the fat of another man's feast. Still, she drinks it. Still, she swallows. Still, she rises. At night, she sleeps with her feet elevated on a sack of hay, ankles wrapped in a wool rag more whole than thread. Her only comfort, a wooden comb, polished smooth by a sister's hands now lost to plague. Flesh returned to worms and wind. She keeps it close. In this world, love is not spoken, it is carried. Then one morning, as the sun breaks gray through mullioned glass, Maud kneels in the solar, the Lord's solar. She wipes away soot from the hearth, collects scraps of parchment where the steward has spilled ink. The room is heavy with the scent of wine, blood, and wax, and there, beneath the window, where the wind creeps like a thief, lies a feather, long, pale, barred with silver and dusk brown, the kind no chicken grows, a falcon's feather. It is not just a thing dropped by chance, it is a fragment of sky. Maud stares at it, as if it might vanish, dissolve into dust the moment she blinks. She reaches for it, slowly, reverently, and her fingers tremble as they close around the shaft. It is soft, unbelievably soft, like the skin behind her sister's ear. She tucks it behind her own ear, hands shaking. She says nothing, she tells no one. The other servants would mock her, call her mad. The lady would have it burned for fear of lice. But for Maud, the feather is not flight. It is memory. It is the wind that once tousled her hair as she raced through barley fields, barefoot, her father laughing behind. It is the sky above the church spire where she once sang, voice clear as bell-metal. It is her sister's breath against her cheek, during winter vigils, when they shared warmth to survive. That day, Maud works faster, she does not limp as much. She eats her stale crusts with a slow grace, as if they were honeyed. No one notices. That evening, while rinsing linens near the well, the stable boy jests that a hawk circled the manor that morning, a sign, he says, that war is coming. Maud says nothing, but in her heart, a sliver of something stirs, not joy. That word is too rich for a servant's tongue. No, what stirs is something quieter, something closer to the ache before tears, a remembering that almost becomes a promise. That night, lying on straw that does not cushion, and under a roof that leaks stars, Maud holds the comb in one hand, and the feather in the other. One, the past. The other, a whisper of something not yet named. She hums again, this time, louder, not enough to wake anyone, but enough that the wind, pushing through the cracks in the timber, might carry it upward. She dreams, not of escape. That, she knows, is for maidens with stories or men with swords. She dreams of a hill, her mother's arms, the echo of hymns sung in harmony, a sky where falcons soar. Outside, the frost hardens. The world remains cruel, indifferent, and heavy. But Maud remains too, still standing, still humming, still human beneath the grime. And somewhere in the dark rafters, a single feather shifts in the wind, a small thing, a silent thing. But not nothing, not anymore. Rain hisses across the muddy courtyard, hissing like a curse whispered through clenched teeth. The cart rolls in, wood groaning, iron wheels dragging through the filth. And on that cart, slumped between sacks of grain and the broken spokes of some forgotten wheel, lies a boy. Jacques, no more than 10. His wrists are bound with rope that has frayed and dried with blood. His face is smudged with soot and fear, his eyes wide, but not blinking. He stares, as if through the fog and the spitting sky, he might see home again. But home is gone. He was not born for chains. He was born among olive trees and almond blossoms, where the language curled like bird song, soft a chiton, now meaningless here, taken in war, handed over like coin in a brutal trade, flesh in exchange for mercy. His village was razed, the dead were counted not by name, but by the silence they left behind. Now he belongs to a baron, whose name he cannot pronounce, whose soldiers spit commands in Norman French, each syllable like a slap. No one explains why he's here. They point, they strike, they shove him toward the stables, where the air is a cauldron of smells, dung, sour hay, the thick salt of horse sweat, blood. A stable master with a lash for a tongue calls him Maud, the mute. He does not try to correct him. What would be the use? His words are foreign here, and his silence is armor. He is not fed some days, other days he is forgotten altogether. The lash finds his back quicker than the bread finds his mouth. But Jacques listens, he watches, he learns. The horses speak in a language older than war, ears flicking, hooves scraping, nostrils flaring with ghost. He comes to know their moods better than those of the men. One stallion kicks when thunder brews beyond the hills. A filly refuses to drink when her stable mate falls ill. And one mare, a giant dapple gray blind in her left eye, lowers her head for no man, until Jacques, she snorts when he approaches, uncertain. But she doesn't retreat. And he, slowly, gently, raises a hand. She lets him brush her mane, she sniffs his shirt, crusted with ash and tears long dried. That night, when the moon is just a smear behind storm clouds, Jacques stays late. Hidden behind hay bales, he hums, not words, just tones. Lullabies his mother once sang, songs of sunlit vineyards, of wind through shutters, of saints who walk the earth barefoot. He does not cry, not anymore. There are no tears left, only songs. Days pass, then weeks. The lashes do not cease, but he begins to bend around them like willow. He learns to braid the horse's manes in patterns from his village, loops like grapevines, plaits like wheat stalks. The other servants mock the strange knots, the stable master sneers, but the horses stand calm beneath his hands. And then, one morning, a stranger arrives, a knight, cloaked in rusted wool, with boots too clean for this place. His helm hangs from his saddle, a thin scar crossing the bridge of his nose. His mount is limping. The stable master tries to take the reins, but the horse rears, foam at its mouth, blood in its gait. The knight is irritated. Is there no one here who knows how to listen to a beast? He growls. Jacques steps forward. He does not ask permission. He simply walks to the horse, his hands open, his pace slow. He touches the creature's flank, feels the tremor beneath the skin, the tightened muscle. With a nod, he points to a hot nail buried in the hoof, and then to the tools by the wall. The knight narrows his eyes, but he lets him try. Jacques works in silence, sweat beads on his brow, not from fear, but focus. He coaxes the hoof clean, wraps it, binds it, then offers the horse water, whispering as he does. The knight tosses a silver coin to the stable master, but points to the boy. For him, he says, not you. The silver is taken, of course, but Jacques sees something else in the water trough, where he goes to wash his hands, a reflection, not of a beaten boy, but of something still alive, still unbroken, a survivor, a memory. That night, he sings again to the blind mare. She leans her heavy head against his chest, and for a moment, just a moment, he imagines he hears the bells of his old village ringing through the wind. The courtyard is quieter now. The other boys have noticed the night, noticed the coin. They watch Jacques differently, with wariness, with envy, but Jacques no longer notices them. He belongs to no one here, not really, but the horses know him. The blind mare trusts him, and sometimes, he dreams not of escape, but of return, to a home rebuilt, to a voice recovered, to a world where no one must trade a child for peace. He does not cry, but in the silence of the stables, his song lingers, and in the hay, where the mare rests her muzzle beside him, something begins to grow, not hope, not yet, but something older, something sturdier, like root through stone. And far beyond the castle walls, where fire once consumed his village, the smoke has finally cleared, but the embers remain. The stone keep breathes in silence, a wet, ancient silence, thick as wool, and just as suffocating. Smoke slithers from the sconce above the stair, casting long shadows that twitch like spirits on the walls. Beneath it, Annis kneels by a basin, her hands plunged deep in bitter water that stings like needles. The skin on her knuckles is cracked and raw, the color of old parchment, hardened by years of lie and frost. She does not wince. Pain, like cold, is simply a room she lives in. Somewhere above, the Lord's hound begins to bark, a hollow, deep sound echoing through the stone chambers like the toll of a warning bell. But Annis keeps scrubbing. Her world does not change with barking. Her world smells of piss and damp wool and pine ash. Her world is linen and bloodstains, soot and secrets. Her world is repetition. Each morning she rises before the bell, tying her tunic with fingers too stiff to feel. She trudges down past the kitchens, through the frost-rimmed courtyard, to the stream. It is barely a stream in winter, more a slow, glacial breath beneath a skin of ice. She hauls the stained sheets there, thick with the waste of those who will never know her name. She breaks the ice with the butt of her bucket. She scrubs with frozen water that bites, and as her hands work, she sings. A cracked voice, half breath and half memory. Old rhymes passed down by crones, whose names have crumbled to dust. Songs meant for infants that never cried. Charms against spirits that still press their foreheads against the windows at night. Songs she never stopped singing, even though no baby ever came. Still she sings. She was married once. For 3 winters there was warmth. A fire shared, bread split, a silence that wasn't empty. Her husband, Tobin, was not a kind man, but he was not cruel either. He built her a shelf for drying herbs. He once left a sprig of hawthorn by her pillow. When the crown called for men, he kissed her brow without a word, and left with a dull sword and a borrowed cloak. That was 15 winters ago. He never came back, neither did the cloak. No dowry, no sons, no coin, just moss, growing thick in the silence she left unchallenged. The manor absorbed her like rot into wood. She became part of the keep, unseen, unmourned, indigestible, a laundress among many, a shadow with chores, until the ring. That day the air was biting, the stream smoked with its own breath as she beat the linen against a rock, and there, tangled in a blood-stained hem, it glinted. A golden ring, heavy, old, etched with a lion's head, nobility's seal, a thing of consequence. She stared at it in her palm as if it had teeth. Around her, the woods said nothing. No birds, no wind, just the distant creak of branches under ice. She could have sold it, fled, bought a new name in a village downriver where no one asked about pasts. She could have become a healer, a midwife, a wife again perhaps. Instead she walked, past the manor, past the stables, into the woods where the ash trees split the sky into wounded veins, and beneath the gnarled roots of one old ash, older than the keep, older than any name spoken inside its walls, she dug with bare hands. She placed the ring in the earth, and covered it with soil and frost and spit, not out of fear, no, out of defiance. Because the ring could save someone who'd never scrubbed blood from sheets or counted bruises on a girl's back, someone who already had everything, and wanted more. The lion could rot, let it sleep with worms. That night, snow came softly, in the servant's room, narrow as a coffin, and no warmer. Annis sat cross-legged on the floor, braiding the hair of a girl named Mir, whose back was still healing from the master's belt. Mir, who whispered dreams with her face to the wall. "I'll run," she said, "come spring. There's a tanner's boy in Ferndale, who promised me a place." Annis said nothing, just nodded, the way you nod at storms. She had heard such promises before. Escape is a song for the young, but she didn't stop the girl. Some dreams are needed, even if they lead nowhere. Later, when the room fell into the slow breathing of sleep, Annis rose. She stepped outside. Snowflakes drifted like ash in the dark. The air was silent, deep, sacred. No orders, no screams, no iron bell, just the world exhaling in white. She lifted her face. For one fragile moment, there was no stream, no lie, no blood, only her breath, warm and living, rising into the dark, only the snow brushing her cheeks like fingers that remembered gentleness, only the hush, and in that hush, something inside her uncurled. The world had not noticed her for decades, but tonight it felt like the sky was watching, not cruelly, not kindly, just watching, and she, a bent woman in a threadbare tunic, stared back without flinching. She would return inside. She would rise again before dawn. She would carry piss-stained linens and scrub her fingers raw. But the ring was buried, and the snow was falling. Let the lion sleep in the dirt. Let the nobles wonder. Let the ashes fall. And somewhere, in the next chapter of time, the hush would break with fire or steel or a girl running into the dawn. But for now, in the thick white silence, Annis breathed, and the world breathed with her. By the flickering orange glow of a dying hearth, Llewellyn bends once more over the parchment. His fingers are trembling, now not from fear, but from the cold that seeps into the bones of this stone monastery, nestled like a secret in the belly of winter. The ink stains that blacken his skin are days old, baked into the creases of his hands, as permanent as the silence he wears like a second robe. He is 17, or perhaps 18. Time has no clear borders here. The world is measured in seasons of fasting, in the dim toll of lauds, in the slow-burning wax of vigil candles. But in the dark corners of the scriptorium, where only the most obedient are left to toil, time dilates, becomes something deeper, older, and infinite. And here sits Llewellyn, alone except for the ghostlight of the fire, and the ancient words he is not allowed to understand. He copies the sacred lines carefully, precisely, like the monks have taught him. His quill moves with near-perfect rhythm, dipping into blackened oak gall ink, tracing Latin across stretched sheepskin, words that mean nothing to him. Yet everything. The wind howls outside, pushing against the stained glass windows like a beast seeking entry. The cloister stones are rimmed in frost, a fine dusting of snow curls in through the cracks in the lidded panes, but still the rule is clear. No distractions, no warmth beyond what is needed to keep the hand from stiffening. They say suffering is the chisel that frees the soul. Once, Llewellyn thought learning would be his liberation, that they had chosen him, singled him out, even loved him enough to bring him here, a shepherd's son, rough-voiced and bare-legged, plucked from the fells during the bitter famine that took his sister and left his mother weeping against the sheepfold walls. They had said, "Come, you will read, you will rise," but he did not rise. He was pressed down, into obedience, into silence. The monks do not strike him, not with hands, but they do not speak either, not unless necessary. They pass him like smoke, they eat in silence, they pray in silence, and when they speak Latin, they speak it above him, never to him. It trickles down like cold rain, shaping him wordlessly, but Llewellyn is watching, listening, remembering, the symbols, the rhythm, the way a loop turns in on itself to mean glory, the way gold leaf clings to the edge of a name so sacred it cannot be spoken, and in the quiet moments between the hours, when he is left alone among the parchment and the dust, he writes, not their words, his small, hidden, bent into the margins, like reeds in the marsh. He writes what he remembers, his mother's lullabies, the color of sunlight on a sheep's back, the way her voice cracked when she called his name in the mist. He writes fragments of dreams, a hilltop with no monastery, a sky without bells, a face he cannot place but always returns to. And last night, he began something new, a symbol, drawn in the bottom corner of the parchment beneath St. Augustine's Confession, a gate. No one taught him to draw gates, no monk instructed him in arches, or hinges, or the subtle shadow of an opening, but he drew it anyway, not a door, a gate, open just a crack, a gate that leads nowhere, and everywhere. The scriptorium breathes with ancient air, the smell of vellum, soot, beeswax, and something deeper, centuries of reverence, fear, and longing. Llewellyn's candle gutters low, and in its weak light, the ink glistens like blood. He closes his eyes for a moment, and in the darkness behind his lids, the gate swings wider. He dreams of the fells, of bracken underfoot, of lambs slipping through his fingers like soft smoke, of running, barefoot, and laughing, across a moor that does not bind him, of a language spoken not in Latin, but in wind and wool, and warmth. Llewellyn, he whispers, just to hear it again, his name. No one has spoken it in years. Here, he is not Llewellyn. He is pure service, boy, servant. But in the silence of the firelight, he dares to summon himself again. A footstep breaks the silence. He freezes. The parchment before him trembles as the air shifts, heavy sandals on cold stone. A monk approaches, silent, slow, unreadable in the dark. Llewellyn quickly slides the margin scrap under a stack of completed folios. His heart drums a hollow rhythm in his chest. The monk does not speak. He places a new sheepskin page before Llewellyn, turns, leaves, no questions, no scoldings. But as the figure vanishes down the cloister corridor, Llewellyn sees, for the first time, the faintest smudge of charcoal beneath the monk's sleeve. A line, a loop, a curve. He is not the only one who writes in the dark. The fire dies, the ink thickens, the gate waits, and as snow gathers silently on the stone outside, Llewellyn dips his quill again. His hand no longer trembles. There is something sacred in disobedience, when done in silence, when done with love. In a monastery bound by obedience, there is a new prayer being written, not in Latin, but in memory, and defiance, and hope hidden beneath gold. A gate has been drawn, and somewhere beyond it, a voice is calling. End chapter. Soft crackle of fire fades into low wind howling through stone corridors. A slow toll of a bell begins, distant. Next, the bell will summon more than just prayer. The chamber was quiet, too quiet, for a house so full of whispers. Moonlight spilled through the lidded window panes in silver slants, crawling over the uneven wooden floor like slow fingers searching for a pulse. Beneath the slanted beams of that noble woman's chamber, a girl knelt. Her fingers moved like ghosts over the ivory combs, the glass perfume bottles, the silver pins with tips like tears. She moved not as one who served, but as one who belonged to the silence itself. Her name was Sibylla. She had never worn silk, never left the castle gates, never tasted honey straight from the comb, or heard a lullaby sung for her alone. She was born behind these walls, daughter of a kitchen maid, who had screamed once, then never again. That scream, it was said, echoed once through the halls, then died, as did the woman. The child survived. No one remembered her birth, but Sibylla did. She carried the absence like a second skin. Now 15, she bore herself like the mist, quiet, clinging, always in corners. She knew how to step without sound, how to catch the lady's sigh before it became a command. She could tell what mood awaited her, just by the way the candle leaned in its holder. Her mistress, Lady Ismene, was as brittle as frost, and just as cold, but beauty clung to her like a crown, making even cruelty look noble. Sibylla did not hate her. That would require space for such a fire. She merely watched how Ismene held a quill like a weapon, how she smiled when guests arrived, but wept, once, when none saw, except Sibylla. It happened on a night when even the walls felt weary. Rain tapped the shutters like nervous fingers, and somewhere, a servant boy coughed into his straw pallet. Sibylla was turning down the bed, folding the last of the linens when she heard it. Soft, strange, disobedient. A sob. Through the wall, thin as a veil, came the sound of her mistress breaking, not shouting, not raging, but folded, collapsed, kneeling beside her own bed like a penitent before an unseen altar. The sharp-edged woman was weeping, and not for show. Sibylla stood still, breath held, hands pressed flat to the cold stone. The sound of those sobs pricked something in her chest. A feeling without name, sharp as hunger. She did not enter. She did not speak. She only lowered herself down, kneeling on the other side of the wall. There beneath the beams, in that quiet hour between dusk and dreams, two women knelt, divided by timber, joined by grief neither dared to voice. Between them, a candle flickered on a low stool. Its flame danced uncertainly, catching gold in one room, and shadow in the other. And then it passed. The next morning, Ismene was made of steel again, her lips painted, her hair braided like rope. No trace of the night remained, no word was spoken, but Sibylla kept something. She had found it nestled in the teeth of the comb, a single lock of golden hair, a thread of her mistress' sorrow, dropped without knowing. Sibylla did not throw it away. She wrapped it in a scrap of linen, plain and soft, and tucked it into the lining of her apron, not for witchcraft, not for revenge, but for memory, because she knew no song would be sung for her, no tomb would bear her name. She would vanish like steam from a kettle, leaving nothing behind but worn shoes and silence. But perhaps that lock of hair would survive. Perhaps one day, someone would find it, unwrap it, wonder who had held it so gently, so reverently, who had cared enough to remember. Sibylla moved through the days like a ghost, still tethered to the living. She polished silver, ground lavender into salves, swept ash from the hearth, while nobles drank mulled wine, and spoke of wars they'd never fight. Once, she overheard two ladies gossiping. They spoke of Ismene's grief, though they misunderstood it, said a letter had come, burned before it could be read aloud, said a lord had vanished, a promise broken, a dowry revoked. Sibylla said nothing. She burned no more letters, but she remembered the flame that had devoured the last one, how it had danced like the candle between them that night. There were days when Ismene would look at her, just briefly, just once, as if trying to recall something lost in a dream, and then the moment would pass, orders would follow, a shawl to mend, a saddle to prepare, a tincture to boil. Still Sibylla served, still she listened, still she remembered. Time moved like the castle shadows, slow, stretching, merciless. Seasons turned. The violets returned in spring, and Sibylla picked them just as before. She knew the herb garden better than she knew her own voice, but inside her, something had shifted. It wasn't rebellion, it was reverence. She began to press things into the hollow beneath a loose stone in the wall, the linen-wrapped lock, a pressed violet, a shard of mirror, a torn piece of a letter she hadn't burned, a secret reliquary, not for saints, but for forgotten women, and she whispered to them when no one watched, not prayers, just name. Her mother's, a scullery girl who'd vanished last winter, the mistress's name. Once, she did not know why she did this, only that it felt like proof, that they had been, that she was, that even if the world left no mark of her passing, there would be some echo. One evening, years later, a new girl began work in the chamber, wide-eyed, with hands still clumsy, and voice still too loud. Sibylla was older now, she did not kneel so quickly. Her hands bore scars from boiling pots and winter bites. She watched the girl, gently corrected her, and when the girl knocked over the comb box, Sibylla knelt to gather the pieces. Her hand brushed something beneath the wardrobe, a piece of linen, pale, dusty, and when she unfolded it, the golden lock remained, faded, but whole. The girl asked nothing, only watched. Sibylla said nothing either, but she smiled, just slightly, and this time, she did not hide it again, because something had changed. The silence was still there, the shadows, still long, but the memory had been held, the relic, remembered, and as she looked out the window that night, the fog rolling over the castle grounds like a great gray sea, she imagined a time when women like her were not ivy on stone walls, but roots, deep, unseen, unyielding, and she whispered once more, not a name, but a promise, that even silence could leave a mark, that a single lock of hair could carry a lifetime, that someone would remember.